Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Varsha and welcome to Study with Varsha. So today is part 2 of ECS Fargate production setup. So let me do one thing. Yeah. So yesterday we have discussed up to internet gateway. Now in today's class we will discuss net gateway. And many people comment in the comment box that we want the practical also, so don't worry. First I will explain the theoretical with the diagram and architecture, and then I will show, I'm promising you, I will show you the practical also by creating the infrastructure and deploying the application on ECS. So don't worry. Now let's understand what net gateway is and how to secure outbound internet access with this. So this diagram focus on the net gateway and explain how private subnet resources access the internet, because I told you private subnet directly can't connect with the internet in the last session. So here it will show how private subnet resources access the internet securely. So that is a net gateway is deployed inside a public subnet and is associated with the elastic IP address, and its main purpose is to allow outbound internet access for the resources in private subnet with while completely blocking inbound internet connections. So this is one way communication model is extremely important you know for security. So in ECS Fargate architecture, ECS task run inside private subnet, so they can directly reach internet, but they still need outbound access for the activities such as pulling Docker image and from Amazon ECR. Let me show you 1 minute. Yeah. So what I was saying, that mm, that how can yeah, how can it will push to the Docker registry, that is ECR, and sorry. So how can we do with the help of net gateway? Net gateway. Yeah. Sorry. And downloading, sorry, dependencies and third party API. Yeah, that was I was talking about. So sending telemetry data, the route table of the private, subnet, and that is configured so that all outbound traffic is sent to the net gateway. So and from there it goes to the internet gateway. The response traffic then flow back through the net gateway to the private subnet, but no unsolicited inbound traffic is allowed. So this diagram view visually shows how net gateway act as a shield that protect private resources while still enabling necessary outbound connectivity. From a real world perspective, net gateway are managed services, so we need no to worry about scaling and ability. And this production architecture, we usually deploy one net gateway like as per ability zone to avoid single point of failure. So I hope you understand. Now moving to the second thing, that is containerization concept based on Docker. So how means containerization? So in simple term, if we'll talk, so containerization means packing an application with its dependency. That is containerized application. So if this diagram, if you will see, so this is containerized application. So this is infrastructure, and that is hosted on operating system, and this is Docker, and this is sub container. So some application have all the thing which is in Docker itself, itself, but some minimal dependency is there in the container, so that it will, hacker will not come to this, it have a minimal memory. But if you're talking about that virtual machine, so it will host on the hypervisor, and it is very high, and it have a complete operating system. So this diagram explain the concept of containerization, which is the foundation of ECS Fargate containerization. So containerization means, I already told, that an application along with its runtime, libraries and dependency into a single unit called as a Docker image. Now this ensures that the application run on the same way in the development, testing and production environment, regardless of where it is deployed. So in traditional deployment, application often fail because of the environment differences. But now containers solve this problem by providing consistency. So a Docker image is a read-only template that contains the application code and dependencies, and when this image is executed, it becomes a running container. So in ECS Fargate, we never deploy source code directly. We always deploy Docker image. This is why understanding containerization is critical. The diagram usually shows how multiple container can run on the same underlying infrastructure while remaining isolated from each other. So another important concept here is immutability. Once an image is built and pushed to a registry like Amazon ECR or Docker Hub or anywhere, it never be modified. Any changes require a building a new image. So this approach makes deployment predictable, rollback easy, and debugging much simpler. And when whenever we think about this diagram, so this one, so we emphasize that the Docker is not just a tool, but a core enabler modern DevOps and cloud native architecture. Now, third thing is Amazon ECR, and we can say container image registry, because here only we used to push our Docker image. So this diagram, if you'll see here, see public ECR QA, it is going to the Amazon ECR, pull through the cache, development, production, and the AWS inspector, and code build, and code deploy with the AWS code pipeline. But here you can use anything, Bitbucket pipeline, Jenkins pipeline as per your requirement, and we are finally deploying it to the Amazon ECS Dev Cluster. And this is the security hub, and this is the VPC endpoint for the production networking content. But this diagram explains the role of Amazon Elastic Container, correct? It is registry, commonly known as a ECR, which is fully managed private Docker registry provided by AWS. And this component plays a critical role in ECS Fargate deployment. Why? Because ECS never runs source code directly. It only runs container image. In real world DevOps project, the workflow always start with developers writing application code. After that, a CI app pipeline build a Docker image using a Docker file, and then this image is then pushed to the ECR. ECR securely store that Docker image and integrated natively with ECS, which means ECS services can easily pull images without complex authentication mechanism. So this diagram usually shows ECR sitting between CI/CD pipeline and ECS services. So highlighting that ECR acts as a single source of truth for container image. Another important aspect shown here is the ECR. If you will see, ECR. Now you will think, what is another like important thing in that ECR. So ECR here, if you will see, it support IAM based access control image. That image is IAM based, and that is supporting for scanning, encryption at rest and private repository, making it suitable for enterprise environment. So emphasize means what? It means that ECR enable immutable deployment, because once an image is pushed, the same image deployed across the dev staging and production environment ensure consistency and reducing deployment related issue. So this is about ECR. Now 14th, if you will see this diagram, what it is saying? It is saying Amazon tagging registry. This is the best practice tagging. And here Docker build -t, Docker build -t API, Docker build -t, and then Docker image it is getting. After that it is pushing and it is building the from image to container. So this is the all the diagram. Now let's understand what it is saying. So this diagram is saying nothing, just to focus on Docker image tagging. Here they are tagging strategy, which is a small concept but extremely important in real production system. Every Docker image pushed to ECR must have a tag, and that what we can say, this tag act as an identifier for a specific version of the application. So many beginner use the latest tag, but this is considered as a bad practice in the production because it is unpredictable and can cause unexpected deployment. Instead of professional DevOps teams use version based like V1, 0.1.3 kind of trick, or commit based tags derived from the git commit id. So this diagram often shows how each CI/CD pipeline run and produces a unique tagged image, first thing, and making deployment traceable and auditable. Tagging also help with rollback, because if a new deployment fails, we can easily redeploy an older stable image by referring its tag. Another important point in that ECS task definition, reference image, what it is, that not repository along. So proper tagging ensures that ECS always run the intended version of the application when teaching this this thing to your one second. So yeah, so this is all about tagging strategy. Now understand why ECS use only ECR. Why? So the reason is very simple. The reason behind is ECS actually pulls Docker image from ECR at runtime, and this is where IAM and ECS integration become very important when an ECS services starts or update a task. So ECS look at the task definition to identify which Docker image needs to be run, and that image reference point to a specific repository and tag in the ECR. So when ECS then uses the ECS task execution rule to authenticate with ECR and pulls the image securely, this full process automated and managed by AWS. So a DevOps engineer do not need to manually handle Docker login or credentials. So this diagram usually shows ECR, ECS, IAM role and CloudWatch working together, because once the image is pulled and the container starts, logs are immediately streamed to CloudWatch. Another key takeaway from this diagram is that ECS pull image only at task startup, which means if you push a new image with the same tag, running task will not automatically update unless a new deployment is triggered. So this reinforces why control deployment and proper versioning are critical when explain ex, understanding this diagram. You people have always stressed that ECS deployment are deterministic and image driven, not code driven. IAM security layer. See, users application load balancer. It is going to EC2 instance, ECS task, and this is the full ECS cluster. So, and this diagram, this one I think you people understand, but this one we should have to be understand. So, I will explain this. Don't worry. So, first understand this ECS actually pull Docker image from ECR at runtime. And this is where IAM and ECS integration become very important. So when an ECS services start or update a task, ECS looks at the task definition to identify which Docker image needs to be run. That image reference points to a specific repository, and tag in ECR ECS then uses like ECS execution role to authenticate with the ECR and pull the image securely. So this process is fully automated and managed by AWS. So DevOps engineer do not need to manually handle Docker login or credentials. And this diagram also usually shows ECR, ECS, IAM rules and CloudWatch working together, because once the image is pulled and the container starts, logs are immediately streamed to CloudWatch. Another key takeaways from this diagram is that ECS pull image only at task startup, which means if you push a new image with the same tag, running task will not automatically update unless a new deployment is triggered. So this reinforcement why control deployment and proper versioning are critical. And whenever we understand that ECS deployment and deterministic and image driven, not code driven. So this I tell you in last explanation also, but this time also. See, first I need credential to list the S3 bucket. Here is my JVT. Then it will go to the hey, can you validate and let me go. Then it will trust. Then it will say okay. Then it will go to the IAM. Then IAM policies will go to everything looks good. So go ahead. After that it will go and here temporary credential it will store, and after that it will go to the AWS SDK and it will go to the S3. So this is the complete workflow of IAM security layer. Now ECS task execution rule, what it will do actually. So start low level role with AWS ECS, then find a task role with elevator permission, and all this flow will go. And this is the actual thing. Task execution role. So this diagram, if you'll see this one, so it is used by ECS services itself, not by application running inside the container. So this what we used to say, distinction, yeah, distinction is very important and often misunderstood by beginners. The execution not allow ECS to perform action required to start a task, such as pulling the Docker image from Amazon ECR, creating network interface, and sending container logs to the CloudWatch logs. Without this role, ECS cannot even start a container. So this diagram usually shows ECS using execution role to authenticate with ECR and CloudWatch on behalf of the task. Another key point here is that execution role is defined at the task definition level and it's shared by all tasks branched using the definition. In production environment, AWS provide a managed policy called Amazon ECS Test Execution Policy, which covers common permission, but many teams customize their policy further to tighten security. So always remember that infrastructure level access should never be used by the application itself. ECS task role. So this one you can understand, okay, but this one, let me explain. So this ECS task role, which is one of the most powerful and important feature of ECS Fargate, the task role is assumed by running the container and defines what AWS services the application inside the container can access. For example, if the application need to be read the file from S3, write logs to DynamoDB fetches secrets from the secret manager or queries at RDS database. So also these permissions are granted using the task role. So this diagram usually show the container directly interacting with AWS services using the task role without any hard-coded credentials, which is a major security improvement compared to traditional deployment. And another important concept shown here is that each task can have its own rule, allowing every fine-grained across access control. So this is extremely useful in microservices architecture where different services need different permission. So always uh, you know uh, take the task role least privilege principle, and that separating task role execution role in the practice. So interviews and security teams looks for that only. Now, list privilege principle. Set permission, verify access, refine permission, list privilege, feedback, AWS organization, security. So list privilege, if you are talking about, so which is a fundamental security concept used in all production grade and cloud architectures. So especially when working with ECS Fargate, the idea of list privilege means that every user, services, or application should have only the minimal permission required to perform its task and nothing more. So, in the context of ECS Fargate, this principle is applied by carefully designing IAM rules for ECS services, task execution, and application container. Take an example like the ECS task execution rule should have permission to pull image from ECR and push logs to the CloudWatch, and it should not have the access to the database or storage services. Similarly, the ECS task role attached to that container should only allow access to the specific AWS services the application actually needs. So, such as read access, only access to S3 bucket, or limited access to the secret manager. So, this diagram usually shows permission being tightly scoped rather than broad wildcard permission like which are dangerous in the production. Another important aspect highlight here is the blue radius reduction. If a container is compromised, limited permission ensure that the attacker cannot access unrelated AWS resources. So, least privilege is not optional. It is mandatory requirement for security compliance and the audit readiness in real world symptoms. And interviewers often look for this exact explanation. So please try to understand whatever I'm explaining. If you are not understanding, replay the video, listen it for 2 or 3 times. But if you will understand once, so if any interviewer will ask any question, you can give the answer and you will get selected. For today's video, this is the last topic, but one more video will come for this explanation, and then you will finally get the real-time things. So please don't miss tomorrow's video also, and if you didn't watch the first video, so go and watch it and then watch this video. So today's last topic is ECS cluster, that is logical grouping. So cluster actually is and very point where many beginners get confused. And ECS cluster in Fargate is not a physical cluster of server. It is simply a logical grouping of ECS services and tasks. So when we use Fargate, We do not manage EC2 instance, auto scaling group, or capacity provide manually. So instead, AWS manage the compute layer completely. The cluster act as a organizational boundary where we deploy related services. For example, we might have one cluster and per environment such as deployment, staging, and production or cluster. So one cluster per business unit depending on organizational standard. So this diagram usually show multiple ECS services running inside a single cluster. So each service is managing its own set of tasks. And another important concept is isolation. So while services share the same cluster, they are isolated from each other through the networking and IAM. So cluster also integrated with CloudWatch for metrics and logs. So always remember, ECS cluster is about organizational and management, not capacity. So thank you for watching Study with Varsha. Have a great day and we'll meet to tomorrow's video. Have a great day. And if you didn't subscribe my channel, do subscribe it, like it, and if your friend is preparing for the DevOps interview or AWS, please share with them also. Have a great day.